Good day, friends. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to friends from all over the world for this very important gathering of looking at sustainable food systems to overcome hunger in this world. Thank you for joining. We have a very solid group of resource persons, but more importantly is all of you who are here as participants who will have a lot of time to contribute because there is a lot of wisdom amongst you. We will start the program initially with a welcome address after me, Joy Eva Bohol, who's my colleague responsible for the youth engagement program of the WCC, will give a few words. Then we will be addressed by Dr. Agnes Aboom, the moderator of the World Council of Churches. She is the leader of the ecumenical movement. And then we go into an interactive session led by Kathleen, bringing some of the key voices, looking back from the whole process of the UN Food System Summit. Then we'll go into working groups, and then we will come back again. We'll be led by Siri from Madagascar, and we'll have two more very important inputs. We will get to know more about our resource persons as we go ahead. But just to say that this program is being organized by the Food for Life campaign of the WCC Ecumenical Advocacy Alliance in collaboration with the youth engagement program of the World Council of Churches. And this program is youth driven, and we have our moderators and many of our participants are young people. Friends, it is so important that we have to reflect on the food systems. We will hear more about it, and thank you for joining. I am Dr. Manoj Kurian, the coordinator of the WCC Ecumenical Advocacy Alliance. I hand over to Joy.
Thank you so much, Manoj. And it's really a good collaboration as well within the WCC and with our ecumenical partners and people of goodwill to be in this conversation, which is really in need as we are also looking at its intersectionality with the different issues like the climate change as well. And it's very good to also highlight the importance of young people, especially in the work that we do, not only in the church, but also in the society, given that more than 50% of the world's population are young people. And even according to the recent UN Food Systems Summit, they affirmed that young people are taking a leading role in shaping fair and equitable food systems around the world. A lot of initiatives are taken by young people to really address the different issues related to food system. It is urgent to strengthen the appeal of agriculture and food systems to young people to secure the future in terms of food security, poverty reduction, employment generation, and ushering peace and political stability. And young people are also entitled to opportunities to acquire necessary skills and opportunities to participate in decision-making and realize our full potential to a driving force to make a positive impact at massive scale. So we're not only, so for now, young people is a bit over 50% of the world's population, but we are 100% of the near future of the population. And so co-leadership, affirming the different initiatives and joining these initiatives of young people as people of faith is very crucial in our work. So we are so excited in this activity, in this event, that we have young speakers and also young people participating to really have conversations together in how we address this issue and also how we encourage each others with the different good practices that we are already doing in the different contexts we live in. So I'm going to give this time back to Manoj to introduce our the World Council of Churches moderator, and as we also move forward to the program.
Thank you very much, Joy. It's really my privilege to introduce Dr. Agnes Abun, who is the moderator of the Central Committee of the WCC. It is the highest the person who is responsible for the overall management of the WCC. She is a layperson who was elected unanimously by the WCC 10th Assembly in 2013 to serve as the moderator of the WCC Central Committee. That is the governing body of the WCC. She is served in the WCC Executive Committee as the representative of the Anglican Church of Kenya. She has done a doctorate in Sweden and specialized in development and has been serving as a development consultant, serving both Kenyan and international organizations. She was the WCC Africa president from 1999 to 2006, and also closely associated with the All Africa Conference of Churches. She is a pioneer in the area of economic justice, peace, and reconciliation. And what is most important is that Dr. Agnes is always concerned about the people. And she always asks me, and she always raises up issues of hunger whenever it happens, wherever in the world. She's the first to alert the WCC. She's extremely devoted, and we are so privileged to have you, Dr. Agnes, with us. And I welcome you to address and kind of anchor this program. And we are also glad that you have also said that you will sit through the whole program and also give us some concluding remarks. Over to you, Dr. Agnes.
Thank you, Dr. Manoj. Dear sisters and brothers, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, as applicable. It is my honor to share a couple of words of introduction to this important webinar on the theme of sustainable food systems to overcome hunger. I welcome you all on behalf of the World Council of Churches and the Global Fellowship of Churches to this vital gathering discussing sustainable food systems to overcome hunger. I'm grateful to the resource persons who will lead us in this discussion, and each one of us and you as participants with the wealth of experiences that you bring to this dialogue. We will analyze and design together with feedback on the United Nations Food System Summit and on the process leading to the summit, to reflect on key lessons, to move forward, to bring about transformation in food systems. We will also consider the role of youth in developing food systems and reflect on Christ's teaching regarding sharing justly and equitably in the context of food systems. What do we mean by food systems? It is a complex web of activities involving production, processing, transport, and consumption. It encompasses key issues concerning the food system that includes how food production affects the natural environment, the impact of food on individual and population health, the governance and economics of food production, its sustainability, the degree to which we waste food. How is the world doing in the context of food systems? We might say not so good. We are faring badly. The world has seen a 6% increase in the number of hungry people since 2015, the year when 193 governments committed to zero hunger in the context of the 2030 Agenda on Sustainable Development. In a world where there is in a world where there is abundant resources and enough and more food to feed all people. What are some of the contextual issues? One is 41 million people are currently at risk of starvation, and around half of them happen to be children. This is happening in a context where 811 million people worldwide, that is 1 to 10, go to bed hungry each night. And hunger increased globally by 25% last year, 2020. Global food prices are almost 35% higher than last year. That is June 2020 and June 2021. Vulnerable populations, children, refugees, and displaced people, and those living in fragile contexts are even more seriously impacted by hunger. 2 billion individuals suffer micronutrient deficiencies, and 3 billion people, that is 40% of the world's population, cannot afford a healthy diet. 5, 1 in 5 deaths globally, the equivalent of 11 million deaths, is associated with poor diet. 6, for the first time in over 20 years, extreme poverty, living on less than $190 per day, increased in 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic's economic impact, compounded by conflict and climate change. The pandemic has exposed and exacerbated the vulnerabilities that many communities face and has deepened inequality in a food system that was failing almost half the population. It reveals the fundamental systemic flaws of our dealings with each other and with nature, systems and structures of our societies, and the politics we follow have direct influence over people and the planet today and for the future. This dire situation cries out for transformation. How do we, as people of faith, respond to this cry? We will listen to each other intently for examples and for wisdom to journey ahead. As we move into the program, let me offer some 3 points from our faith that reminds us of the moral and ethical imperative for us to commit and carry forward the transformation that is needed in food systems. First is a gift that must be shared unconditionally. All creation belongs to our Lord, and the very life we have, the surroundings we live in, and the food that we receive and have access to is a divine gift. As the psalmist so rightly reminds us in Psalms 24, the earth is the Lord's and all that dwells in it. A gift that reminds us that God is with us continually, accompanying us contributing both to our physical and spiritual sustenance, assisting us to reflect the love and grace of God, a gift that we are called to share unconditionally. Second, mutual accountability. Each one of us is our sisters and brothers' keeper. Genesis 4:1-13. We may be born in different countries, different races, tribes. We may belong to different social and economic strata, different gender, different abilities, different political, religious, or ideological affiliations, but we are part of the one body of God. You can look at 1 Corinthians 12, and we are reminded to see divinity in each other. If that one body had one hand in a flame and the other in cold water, we can then not say or claim that on average, the body is fine. Our accountability to each other mirrors our accountability to God. The third and final point is our responsibility to all creatures and the generations yet to be born. The covenant that God made in the presence of Noah, symbolized by the rainbow in Genesis 9, is unique because it was made not just with Noah and not just with Noah's children and all of the descendants, but with every creature on the earth. The covenant is not limited in time or with one species. As part of our responsibility to honor that covenant, we must take care of creation, walk gently on the earth, sharing it with all parties to the covenant, which includes all creatures and all generations yet to be born. We are challenged to walk the talk. Let the way we live, relate with each other, and manage our affairs reflect this lived spirituality, which will guide us to heal the world, accompany the recovery of creation, and ensure that all are fed. May I once again thank you, resource persons, and all the participants. And as we begin our deliberations of this consultation, may I invite us to pray together the Lord's Prayer, each in our own languages. Welcome.
Father, what in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Forever and ever. Amen. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Dr. Agnes Aboom, for this inspiring start. And I will quickly hand over the floor to the moderator of the program for the first section, Kathleen Kumar, who is a young person, one of the youth animators of our newly formed Youth for Life-Giving food, agriculture, and fisheries. She is a student, master's student, studying in the University of Cape Town, and a very dynamic leader who is very active in a youth group and also very interested in issues of agriculture. We look forward to you, Kathleen. Kindly take over and also introduce the next our resource persons, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Manoj. Hello, everybody, and good afternoon from South Africa. I'm very happy to moderate this session. I will start by introducing our resource persons for this session. We will hear from Miss Winnie Mailu. We'll also hear from Mr. Andrew Schwartz and also from Mr. Andrew Butlet Kang, who will refer to and address as Drew for this session. Miss Winnie Mailu is a market system specialist with over 15 years of experience. She has a bachelor's degree in economics and a master's in local and regional economic development. Her experiences span around value chain development, inclusive agribusiness, youth development, financial inclusion, amongst other cross-cutting issues such as climate resilience and gender. She is currently the Global Markets and Livelihood Advisor at Christian Aid, with an overall responsibility of providing technical oversight to programs in over 10 countries. She has previously worked for the Netherlands Development Organization as Economic Development Advisor. She believes poverty is multifaceted and will only be eradicated if different agencies work together. Hello, Winnie, and thank you. Our next resource person is Mr. Andrew Drew Kang Butlet. He has been working with the Presbyterian Church of the USA's hunger program since moving to Louisville, Kentucky in 2001. The Presbyterian Hunger Program works nationally and internationally to address the root causes of hunger. Their priorities include food justice, environmental and climate justice, and worker justice. He serves on the boards of the National Farm Worker Ministry, Interfaith Worker Justice, and on the National Coordination of the U.S. Food Sovereignty Alliance. Locally, Andrew volunteers with New Roots in the Food in Neighborhoods Community Coalition and Louisville Showing Up for Racial Justice. Hi, Andrew, and thank you for being here with us today. And the last person for this session is Mr. Andrew Schwartz, who has nearly a decade of experience working with community leaders and elected officials around the world to build movements, craft communications, and affect change on climate and environmental issues. He is the Director of Sustainability and Global Affairs at the Center for Earth Ethics, where he works to change both policies and culture to advance the sustained well-being of the people of the world. He's a graduate of the Union Theological Seminary, and his career as a youth representative to the United Nations Rio Plus 20 conference in Brazil in 2012. He's a native of Oregon, and Andrew and his wife and daughter live in Portland. Hi, Andrew, and thank you for being here. We'll go on to hear from the three of them, and I'll direct the first question to Miss Winnie first. Winnie, please tell us about the key insights from the Food Systems Summit of the UN that took place on the 23rd of September. Could you please share some key insights?
Thank you very much, Kathleen, and thank you also for the generous introduction. Yes, so today I'm really excited that we get time to share and reflect about the UN Food Summit, which came to a close about 2 weeks ago. So this is really an exciting moment where we all sit together, look back, and see what exactly transpired and what can we take forward. So for me, I would like to share 3 quick insights. And one, I'll focus on the process, the outcome, and also a bit of criticism that went into this. Around the process, I feel that the UN Food Systems Summit went to great lengths to carry out what I would call multi-stakeholder process approach of bringing together different stakeholders. I feel for me, this was a really great step towards wanting to initiate discussions that address food systems. And I think for that, we need to applaud that. It is such a great thing. It's not every day that you see a dialogue running over 18 months. That's 1.5 years. It's not every day that we see the multi-level dialogues happening from local level, national level, international level. It's also not every day that we see over 86 world leaders from the UN body, the churches, the business executives, sitting together and coming up and having a conversation. But then most importantly, it's also not every day that we see smallholder farmers being called to the table. We see women being called to the table. We see other people like the young people being called to the table, the people from indigenous community coming to the table. So for me, I think that's a big one. I've really reflected on it, and I think it's a huge opportunity that everybody was given to be able to shape the global food system. With regard to outcome, one outcome that I would like to talk about, which I feel resonates to me personally, is the outcome around a coalition been formed around transformation of food systems through agroecology. Yes, agroecology. There was a recognition that agroecology, which is promoting regenerative agriculture, needs to be respected and needs to be pushed forward. How this is going to be done, I think, is yet to be determined. But what I would like to celebrate is the fact that there was that realization that we need a transformative approach to food production. And that transformative approach, for example, agroecology, there are 10 elements that have been developed by the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, touching on diversity, touching on the human and social values, responsible governance, and all these areas, which for me, I feel is important going forward. Then just to touch on the criticism is also something else that I felt was quite insightful, that it's also very important that we do not take each other for granted. We have divergent views on how we want to push the food systems forward. And therefore, a number of agencies, churches, networks, farm organizations came together and actually boycotted the summit. And the insight for me here was that despite that, they justifiably had concerns, which we all need to think about around the corporate capture of the system, they said, and other things. I think my point here is that everybody has something to put on the table, whether they sat on it or not, and therefore we need to listen to them going into the future. Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you, Winnie. Andrew Schwartz. Do you have some key insights about the food systems and the process leading to it, the UN Food Systems Summit?
Yeah, thank you. Really a pleasure and honor to be here for this important conversation. And I think, yeah, I really resonate with what Winnie said, just in terms of the successes. I think it was incredible to see so many different people come together from around the world to speak about the state of our food systems, the pitfalls, the gaps. And I think those have become abundantly clear due to COVID-19 and the impacts that it's had around the world. I think for me personally, the Food System Summit was a disappointment in so many different ways, but I think that was predictable enough. The UN is beholden to a ton of different power structures to say anything that is too radical or too honest about the state of our food systems and what are the core drivers of these inefficiencies. There was a lot of hedging around nutrition, around meat consumption, about transitioning to a plant-based diet, things that would have demonstrable impacts on the health of human beings and the health of the planet. And yet those things were kind of pushed to the side for geopolitical and economic reasons. And so for me, that was a major takeaway of what does it take to speak truth into processes, and how do we impact these overarching structural issues that are driving inequity, that are driving destruction. And that is a piece that I think from the faith community, we can't be silent on. The times are too dire to not speak truth to the issues that are happening in our world. I was proud to host 5 different dialogues through our Faith and Food Coalition, where we create a multilateral interfaith cross-sector conversation around our food systems. And I think when you invite people into a space that is based in spirituality and religion and ethics, it necessarily changes the tone of the conversation. You have to pull back from the mechanical or the industrial approaches to our food systems and place people and planet first, and ask people and planet centered questions about what do our solutions need to be to meet those needs first, pushing profit to the side and saying right now we know that these systems are creating gaps between the rich and the poor, between men and women, between urban and rural. They are overwhelming what the earth can do. And I think those are the pieces that for me really came out, because the solutions are there. We spoke with people in Africa, in Asia, in America, indigenous leaders, people in NGOs, farmers, all of whom can point at those solutions. They're right there. And I think the most frustrating thing is the gap between getting from where we are to the solutions we need to see, is a sensibility of, well, it would cut into our profits, or it would cut into the power that we hold. And I think this is the role of faith communities, is to be a reminder that we can do better and we are better than this. And I think in a space where there seems to be so much working against us, it's the food system, for me at least, served as a solid reminder that there's so many good people around the world who are creating the change that we need to see, who are actively engaging in their communities, in their regions, and their governments to bring about the transformation. And it was also a reminder of kind of the larger, broader systems that we collectively are up against and that we need to change. And that change for me begins from a space of political will, of organizing, of better conversations, and asking better questions. And so I thought the Food System Summit, in many respects, as I said, was a disappointment, but I also thought it was an enormous win for creating a better conversation and demanding that we ask better questions and strive for better solutions to create the change and the transformation that so many people need in such a short amount of time. So I want to thank you for the question, and I will pass it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for that. That is quite valuable. Drew, do you have any additional insights to put forward, please?
Sure, and thank you. I must first point out the obvious. The 2 representatives from the United States, both white men, both in this case named Andrew. So I'm not happy to be one of them, but this is typical of mainstream religious groups in the US, but not of the food justice activism happening here. Of course, here in the US and around the world, most the real work of food, labor, housing, and climate justice is being done by women, by Black, Indigenous, people of color, LGBTQI+, and other oppressed communities in resistance. Had to get that out there, but so. There has also been a huge global counter mobilization against the UN Food System Summit. People may be following this, but it's happened in countries around the global South and North. And one of those was the Global People's Summit on Food Systems. In its People's Declaration, it critiqued the UN Summit for increasing the role of big corporations over global food systems and misleading the people through corporate-led false solutions to hunger and climate change. Much of civil society opposed the approach of the UN summit and boycotted it and the processes leading up to it. Kind of stepping back to a bigger picture, one critical thing to understand is that there is this global trend that the UN summit intended to accelerate. It's a battle against multilateralism. It's a battle against multilateralism and a push for so-called multi-stakeholderism by the power elite. So multi-stakeholder, many stakeholders sounds like a good thing, but in practice, existing representative stakeholder groups made up of indigenous peoples, social movements, grassroots groups are sidelined and outnumbered by corporate and philanthropic interests, technocrats, paid scholars, scientists, and big non-governmental organizations that want to sit around those elite secretive tables. So the UN summit was a giant multi-stakeholder process and event dressed up in the costume of a people's summit. It entailed months of national dialogues, interfaith dialogues, youth events, and yet had no paths or mechanisms for any of those dialogues to actually influence the summit priorities. US Department of Agriculture leaders that I spoke with confirmed there were no avenues for their dialogues to influence the summit. So as I mentioned, this trend intends to weaken multilateralism. The strategy is to put forward unrepresentative, so-called multi-stakeholder initiatives. Now, these are approaches typically financed by transnational agribusinesses, philanthropic foundations like the Gates and Rockefeller foundations, and they marginalize UN-led multilateralism and the Rome food agencies. So the big casualties have been the UN civil society mechanism of the Committee for World Food Security, that committee, and the high-level panel of experts on food security and nutrition, and the billions of smaller scale farmers and rural people that they have been attempting to represent. So the goal of these corporations and foundations, for example, in Africa, where they have formed the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa, is to modernize agriculture, which means industrialized farming with high-tech toys, genetic engineering, chemicals, and high profits for corporations. We have seen the results of similar efforts in the first Green Revolution play out in India and elsewhere, where tens of millions of farmers are bankrupted, widespread farmer suicides, the depopulation and impoverishment of rural areas, and urban slums filling with families who could no longer survive on their land. So to stay on time, I will end here, but I truly believe that addressing the crises we are facing on Earth requires stronger, not weaker structures of multilateral governance. Any hope of coming out of this intact as a species is cooperation, not agendas driven by corporate greed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Drew. I think we all have learned so much about what are some of the successes of the summit, and of course, have now, an appreciation of what are the challenges and some of the disappointments from the summit. That said, I think it's important then we look forward, and say, what is it that we think can be done to adapt or change our strategies in order to bring about transformation to pro-people and pro-planet food systems. Any thoughts on that? Drew, maybe let's start off with you.
Let me get unmuted. And actually, let me just quick share two little slides, if that's all right. Yeah, in terms of how to move forward, given this scenario, I think there are some key ways we need to resist and we need to build. So how we can resist is to build the bigger we, to increase our numbers of people that are fighting for equity, for justice, for sustainable food systems. It's to engage in the battle of ideas, because a lot of the summit was around creating this new narrative, and we need to be offering our stories as a counter narrative. We need to support social movements, groups that are working locally, groups that are connected to national and international social movements. And we need to, of course, put pressure on our governments as they try to lay out these strategies that have been committed to when they oppose these things that we all value. So yeah, we need to resist, and we also need to build. And so some three things I would suggest is that we really practice grassroots democracy in all the things we do in our groups, in our churches, everywhere, and dismantle racist social and economic systems. 2, we participate in groups which promote long-term land and water access, agroecology, and food sovereignty. And 3, that we build equitable and sustainable local food economies in your home place and everywhere. And these based on a new type of more solidarity, more gift-giving, life-affirming economics. So yeah, those would be what I would contribute.
Thank you. Winnie, do you have some thoughts on how we can look forward and adapt our strategies?
Yes, I think for me, the first thing is that we need to appreciate that the power dynamics that exist within the entire food system. It's very intricate. It's a system where different actors, some of the actors hold immense power against other actors. And that has nothing to do with how much whoever it is giving, if you can quantify what the giving is. And I just really want to focus on my work. I work a lot with smallholder farmers. And I see the amount of effort they put in food production. They have to wake up early, and they have to deal with daily issues before they get to the farm itself. And then when the food is ready, they have to struggle with the harvest, they have to struggle with storage, and then they also have to struggle with the market. They're not even getting enough to take care of the costs that has gone into production. And I just wonder whether there is an appreciation of all the effort that goes at that level. And in a way, why the food system, most people thought it was failed, is that we didn't hear enough of those voices. For us to have a very equitable, efficient, and to have a very fair system, we need to hear the voice of everybody. And in my opinion, that was such a lost opportunity. I sat in a few of these dialogues, and I was just, sometimes you even get annoyed at the level of the discussions that are going on, really based on theories, based on academics. And you're like, why? All the knowledge sits with those people it belongs to, and they need spaces. They need to be given the opportunity to sit at the table and voice their concern. So for me, I feel this is one area where we can build on. We need to bring the farmers, we need to bring them at the table. We need to listen to the issues, and we need to address them accordingly. I think for me, the other thing that I feel we need to bring forward is the research on this concept of agroecology, which now is getting to be what I would say, quote unquote, really attractive going forward. But how much has it really been resourced? There is very minimal resourcing for agroecology. A lot of money is going to intensification of farming. A lot of money is going to research on new fertilizers, research on new chemicals, research on new diseases. Why are they new? They are new because we forgot what solution looks like. Our grandfathers, our ancestors had solutions. But because all this went undocumented, now we have to invest a lot of money to research. And my thinking is going forward, we need to take a step back and look at how much should we really invest and resource agroecology so that we can harness indigenous knowledge, so that we can work in solidarity with all communities and with everybody. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Winnie, for that. Andrew? Anything to add?
I mean, I would just listen to Winnie more. I thought what she said there was great. I mean, I do think that the pieces around agroecology, where funding goes, I mean, those are the core issues, right? I think and this is where my big frustration came from, is there are solutions that are happening on the ground at the grassroots. Andrew, thank you for bringing up these democratic processes and these coalitions and these groups and these cooperatives. I mean, that is where the change is. And for me, this is where I think the investment needs to be. I think, and as Andrew put, you see the stratification within our food systems. One that is driven by a desire for more profit, more control. The Green Revolution, whether it's in India or the one that's going on right now in Africa, is a delineation between those who have and those who have not. And we know who's going to suffer and who is going to do well. And so I think knowing that those power structures exist, there is a deep need for localization, for bioregionalism, for agroecology, to create change wherever we can, while also interacting within these broader systems. I think we knew what the UN Food System Summit was going to be before it happened. And I think it was an unfortunate but important teaching moment that if we are going to create change, it is important to be at those tables, but it's also important to create the tables for ourselves and invite them to there and not feel so dependent on these larger systems. There's a brokenness from those systems, maybe not even a brokenness, an intentional dysfunction away from what's best for the average person and towards what's best for a corporation or for a powerful nation state. And that's something that we need to be honest about, and then work within our own communities, within our own religious traditions, within our own constituencies to bring about that change. I think there's a power dynamic here that we cannot acquiesce and need to really lean into and build into those solutions and fight hard to get them better funded, but also just to do and to create the hope ourselves. And so, yeah, for me, it was a reaffirmation of the commitment to community, and to also to speak very loudly in the rooms that we're able to speak in, because those are valuable spaces. So thank you.
Thank you, Andrew, for that. I think what is coming out from all three of you is that there is definitely a power imbalance, within the agriculture and the food systems sector. And while there are some solutions that came out of the UN summit, there are some questions about how well resourced those are, or how we can invest in those solutions, and whether we're investing where we should be. I think that's very valuable. Thank you all for that. I was wondering whether you have any, parting insights or, words, concluding remarks, just to kind of seal what it is that was most important for you, and what do you think is most important for us to remember as we go forward. Andrew, you can go first.
Concluding remarks. I think, I think these processes, though deeply frustrating, still have a value. And I think the value is in the fact that we're in this conversation right now, and we would not have been otherwise. I think, Drew, to your point, it is deeply valuable to listen to people who are yelling from the outside and are creating that change and are calling out the inequities in these structures. And I think that to me is one of the most powerful pieces that we have, is remembering that it's just not an all or nothing gambit, that there are so many different things happening, and that though one side of things might be disappointing, there's a deep amount of hope and resilience in other pockets. And so for me, this was, like I said, though disappointing, I think there was some incredible good things that came out of it. And those are the ones that we need to hold on to and build on, while also not being satisfied with what little bit we may have gotten.
Thanks for that. Drew.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I just really appreciate my fellow resource people and their wise words and insights. And I would just leave us with one very simple thing. And I think it's to see the right to food as a foundational goal and kind of a litmus test. I think fully recognizing, fully implementing, and enforcing the God-given and human right to good food can be such a powerful message. And I think that's part of the counter narrative that we have to keep telling and speaking truth to power. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Winnie, your concluding remarks, please.
Thank you, Kathleen. I think for me, I really want to say that, and going back to what Agnes said about food as a divine gift, that we really need to preach this. It's not just a commodity to enrich a few people while others suffer. The other principle, I think we really need to think hard about survival of the fittest. If anything happened to this universe at the speed that we are driving it, who will survive? I think humanity will be the ones to go down first. And this is something that each and every person needs to think about. And it's not just the humans who live in Africa, Asia, it's humanity, the entire humanity, the human race. And therefore, just by having these serious thoughts and reflections would really make us work better together in a more collaborative manner. Some of these words we are throwing about synergies and things, we really need to put them into perspective when we ask some of those hard questions. And I think for me, the last one is each and everybody has a responsibility, which again, like Drew calls it agency, that we need to speak up. If the power is not given to you, we need to get out of there and grab it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Winnie, for that. I think what I take from it is that we should see food more as a gift for all of us to share equitably and less of a commodity. And that we should speak up in spaces that, we have a chance to speak, because those are valuable spaces, and that, we can use those spaces to effect change or influence change. Thank you so much to all three of you for your inputs and your valuable insights. We'll move on to the second part of the program, which will be the breakaway rooms. Marcelo, if you can just project the instructions for the second part of the program.
Once we divide them in groups, we're going to send the questions to the groups and they have their own screen.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Kathleen, for your leadership and all for the resource persons. We'll go into the groups. We went a bit over time for the first session, but it was such a rich session. I think it is important that we hear that. Now, in the working group, we'll have you will get the three questions. The leaders are assigned. These are the key resource persons, but also have requested Joy and also Judith to be so there are 6 working groups. Let's break for about half an hour, because we had initially thought about 50 minutes, but it's reduced to half an hour. So there are some note takers who are already assigned. They will speak up. But if there are nobody who's identifying themselves in your group, please volunteer. One person volunteer to note, and then to be a note taker and come back and report in a precise manner. It's very important that we get your wisdom. Thank you so much. Now we will open all the rooms.
Thanks, Manoj.
if you have not been assigned,
I'm slowly adding each of them.
okay, thank you.
Okay. Keep you here, okay, Manoj?
Can you send me the link, Marcelo, to the live stream?
Yeah, but don't worry too much. It's very calm there.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So should I go? No, I'll just remain here, isn't it? It's better to.
Yeah, you are live on YouTube.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Well, we'll trim this part later on. Have get Drupal not assigned. This is strange because I think I did assign him to.
So we have actually, when you look at the time, I think we can come back at 4:30, right? Do you think that's a good, or do you think
Yes.
4:25?
Yeah, it's up to you. Manoj, can you assist Gert Drupal to join a room because I've been moving him from one room to another?
Give me a room.
Yeah, so you should receive a message on the screen to join.
Yes.
Oh, so just a moment. I'm not able to
Yeah.
unassign.
I'm going to move him to group 5.
Okay. Should I move Susan to one room as well?
No, well, if she wants. I don't know if she's following. Okay.
Ayuko, I have assigned you to one of the rooms. Will you accept it? Can you?
It's the same with Professor Gert Drupal.
Yes.
I'm assigning him, but in order to join, he needs to accept this assignment. Probably a message on his screen.
There's no message.
Sorry about that, Professor.
I'm sorry, Gert, are you? Oh, otherwise, there is an echo as well. Are you joining from a phone or a computer?
Computer.
I say his name twice.
Assign.
He is assigned to room 5, and I have him twice on room 5. I'll try to move to room 6. But I have a message that he did not join.
Because Gert, is it not coming in your Zoom? Usually it comes up saying that.
I have.
Or the other possibility is for you to, we can have a conversation.
I rejoined.
Okay, you rejoined. Okay. Has he joined?
I think he did, yes. I have Angelique. Yeah, she just joined. So Manoj, basically you're live on YouTube and there's nobody watching. So
Okay, that's no problem.
we can trim this part later on. Okay, very good discussion. Very good.
Yeah. The discussion was very good, so that I didn't want to cut it down, and because they are very wise, but this discussion was quite important because there was a lot of criticism of the UN Food Systems Summit, but at the same time, there were groups which were very unhappy with the UN Food Systems Summit, but there were groups that were engaged. So our constituency had this, this.
I'm sending the questions to the groups.
Okay.
Long questions, there is a limitation of text.
Yeah. Yeah, he finally joined. He joined.
Okay. So yeah, you're the only one who did not. You want to join one group? Feel free to go. I stay here. And then just this WCC logo on screen.
Okay. That's, so what do you think? So let's decide on the time. What do you think? 5 minutes to 3:25? Sorry, 4:25.
Let me just look at the program. Yes.
Because
yes,
we need to finish
and I can send messages to the breakout groups saying 5 minutes more, and once I close, they still have 1 minute. So whenever you feel like, just let me know.
Group
and then
the smallest, I think the room number one is the smallest, I think so.
Okay, good luck.
Thank you.
Enjoy the ride.
Thank you.
You're still here.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't get the message. Yeah, strange. Maybe try some other room. I don't know. Is it because I'm a co-host? Oh, I can join. Let me just join. Yes. Okay. I'll do that from my own.
Can you join breakout room 3? Because they're asking for assistance.
Okay, 3, breakout room 3.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
One, two, three. quickly open my camera to greet Archbishop Seraphine.
Oh, what surprise!
I have to go backstage.
Are you coming to Glasgow? Are you going to Glasgow in a few
Yes.
days?
Yes.
Which days you will be there?
Second week. I'm in the weekend and then the second week.
Okay, me also, if it's the will of God, I will be there for 4 to 9 of November. So
We
I
will
hope
meet
to see
again.
you.
Great,
Okay.
great.
Welcome back, friends. I hope you had a good discussion. Sorry of the shortened time and the glitches of you getting a little bit less time and for the delay in getting the questions. And now I hand over the moderatorship to Siri. Siri is a young leader from Madagascar, from the Reformed Church in Madagascar. He was a steward in the last assembly, but he's also along with, I think there are other Ankur and there are some members of the Eco School of Asia, but Siri was a alumni of the Eco School in Africa. He's also one of the young persons along with Kathleen helping animate this youth for life-giving food, agriculture, and fisheries. One of the wonderful things that I like of him is that he's not only a leader in his church, but he's also an entrepreneur. He is also not just working on food, but on food waste. He's also engaged in climate work. He works for the government, but he has his own consultancy. So thank you. Welcome, Siri. Please take over from now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Manoj, for giving me the floor. And thank you so much for this opportunity to co-moderate this session. Since we are back from the group work, the group rooms, we have 15 minutes to report our thoughts and different ideas that has been issued from different breakout sessions. So I invite note takers and moderators from each group to report back to us the result of our breakout rooms working groups. If the first group is ready, I invite the note taker and the reporters from the first group to present their ideas.
The first group was moderated by Andrew Schwartz, his group. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I took on the role of moderator and note taker. And I think just to keep it brief, because I know time is short, I think in terms of speaking to empowering youth and taking away those impediments, a lot of the conversation revolves around education. A lot of our current food system has pushed processed foods, ultra processed foods, and there's a general misunderstanding or lack of understanding about where food comes from. So community gardens, kitchen gardens, and basic education about where and how food comes from was a major piece in our conversation and trying to reorient youth with the land and some of those pieces. I think we also talked, and that tied into our strategies about how to bring about transformation. Professor Gert had a great example from Germany where youth started dumpster diving outside of major supermarkets to take that food, that perfectly good food, and redistribute to people who were in need of food. But that created a huge legal case because the supermarkets are saying, well, no, that's still our food to throw away. And therefore you are robbing us. And so it's created this large legal battle within Germany. And it really highlights, on the one hand, the Food System Summit really talked about reducing food waste, but then we have a clear example of why it's so hard to do that because corporations are suing kids for stealing food that they threw away. So it's crazy, but it's, you know, it's a major piece of changing these systems. But then there's also this this trend of getting food to people who don't have any, and not even, as one of Ina in our group mentioned, in Madagascar, it's not a question of getting healthy or nutritious or diverse foods, it's getting any food, period, you know. And there's a deep need within our systems, and Rebecca brought this up, that you know, churches and community groups can only do so much. We really need to push policy with our governments and these large systems to step into these gaps that philanthropy or goodwill can't get to, and that we really need to press on issues around land ownership, land back, to help groups that are dispossessed and don't have that power. So it's that power rebalancing, and trying to really highlight vulnerable or traditionally disempowered people to, through land backs, regain some of their strength. So I'm sure I missed some things, but I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much for that report and so important insights, Andrew. Thank you so much. So if the other members of the group has nothing to add, we can go to the next group, the second group.
Dr. Evans.
And that was our group, Christopher, if you would be willing to present.
Sure. Yeah, right away. So one of the problems we talked about was that there's a clear disconnect between the youth and some of our methods. And that could be because there is an idea that agriculture is kind of like a backbreaking work, and the parents kind of force this idea that when I send my child to school and they're going to get an education, and then they don't want them to be a part of this kind of hard agricultural work. So there's a clear disconnect between the youth, and we don't really understand them. That's one of the problems we discussed. And as well as resources are becoming limited now as generations begin to grow and expand. Agricultural land is now decreasing as these major corporations step in, and agriculture is now dividing into many different groups. It's no longer, as mentioned, seed by seed planting, but it's more of accounting and AI farming and corporations associated with agriculture. So the indigenous system is broken, and it's an idea that it's kind of like gone away. In addition, organic food is also an idea of the past as well. So some countries produce what they do not consume, and some countries also consume what they do not produce. So this kind of brings like a system of corrupt ideologies, and it makes a country poor. So the solution is pretty general: education, and it is proclaiming food for local consumption and a life growing agriculture, and basically letting the people, the youth, speak, let their opinions be heard, and producing a kind of agriculture that is sustainable in its way for the people, and a life affirming in that sense.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Christopher. That's an important insight and a valuable input. Yes, and the next group is the third group. Diana will report our ideas. Floor is to you, Diana. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I we talked a lot about what's some of the same things some of the other folks were talking about. You know, Christopher was just talking about what some of the same things Christopher was just mentioned. We talked about the whole idea of mindset, about changing people's mindsets about folks who engage in food production, that young people want opportunities that are more attractive than going and, you know, hoe and shovel and food production and that kind of thing. We also talked about the issue of land. It requires land for people to produce food, and young people don't have access to land. That we need more men involved in this issue of farming, because in a lot of countries, it's dominated by young women. We also talked about changing the definition of food, that most people, when they think about food, they usually only think about the meat part of it, chicken and beef, but we need to train people and teach them about agriculture and investing in growing vegetables and fresh food like that, and broaden the idea about the definition of food. We also thought about leveraging technology for young people, since it is an important thing that young people are involved in now, especially during this time of COVID. We know that people did lots of things about getting food, moving back and forth by ordering stuff online and technology. So we need to figure out a way to leverage technology when it comes to food production or young people involved in food. And we also talked about education, that we needed to start early, that education on agriculture, that space is kind of shrinking and we're not really teaching about how to be involved in agriculture. And so if we start early and then push it toward college, we get people excited. I know I have a nephew who, that's not the thing I do, but he is just way involved in growing agriculture on our family land. And the last thing I would say is that we also talked about ensuring that we don't lose the land to foreigners who come in and buy land for big corporations at the expense of the people in the local communities. And we didn't actually get to the third question, so I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Diana, for that insights. I give the floor to Reverend Dr. Evans for sharing their ideas from Group 4. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tracy. In our Group 4, we had 5 participants: Evelyn from Philippines, Katlego from South Africa, Anko from India, I suppose, Ayoko from Togo, and myself, Evans, from Nigeria. We discussed the questions, and we felt that a major impediment to youth participation in agriculture has to do with education. We discovered that from the grassroots, from the beginning of training, not so much is talked about concerning agriculture, especially from our perspective in Africa. When a young person gets admission to read agriculture in the university, a lot of people will think that it does not have a future. And because of this, going into agriculture is greatly discouraged. And again, we felt that there is lack of technological facilities. When you have people who are active with very strong energy, they don't have the facilities to do the work. And thirdly, we felt that there is lack of funding. And again, government policies give attention to multinationals and care less about local agricultural initiatives and investments. So these are some of the factors that impedes on youth participation in agriculture. And we feel that if it is tackled, there will be an improvement. And then on question number 2, our thoughts on how to adapt or change strategies to bring about transformation. We feel that there is need for people to have more access to information. And then youth should be encouraged to form networks and farmer cooperative societies, because we felt that organizations that are willing to fund agriculture may not be willing to fund individuals, but they may be willing to fund clusters of youth that are willing to go into agriculture. So we feel that people should be encouraged to form clusters, and as such, they'll be able to access funds, both from local banks and also from international organizations. And then we felt that key lessons learned from today's teaching on food availability, if you like, is that people who are important in agriculture are not captured when these matters are discussed. So there is need for more advocacy to go down to the grassroots, so that the people who are targeted as the cream of people with full energy for agriculture, who incidentally are the youth, should be addressed and should be motivated. They should be a kind of spurred into taking action concerning agriculture. And then at every opportunity we have as organizations, as individuals, we should talk about agriculture. And then we concluded by saying it is possible to have a food supply chain where everyone's need is catered for. At the Christian Council of Nigeria, we have worked on this issue of food, advocating for food. And like Christopher said, we have a slogan here that we should grow what we eat and then eat what we grow. As soon as we have this understanding, everybody's little garden is put to work, every available farmland is utilized. And then we keep on talking about it at every opportunity we find ourselves. There will be a change, there will be a transformation. These are the thoughts of Group 4. And I want to believe that Kat Lego, Ayoko, Evelyn, and all the rest of the members, Anchor, we are all here. If there is anything I have missed, please, there will be, if you can give them opportunity to also speak up. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Reverend Dr. Evans. That's a very powerful quote. Yes, as time is running, I invite Klaus Bosser to present Group 5 thoughts. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It was a very interesting group meeting and discussion, and in fact, a kind of survey of what the different participants of our group have been living through and been experiencing. And Metropolitan Seraphim especially pointed out the work of his church in the Orthodox Church and in projects which addressed the youth. And what I understood was that there was quite a positive and active response also, saying we can manage, we can introduce new facts and devices. And but the question came also that how do you allow youth to do this and to involve them? And there was one great problem with those youngsters who are if you like, orphans who may be still a child of a lonely mother. And here there's a great problem of neglect or of keeping outside. And the question is, how can we involve them in also participating in and helping their mothers in surviving with their families? So there was a question that youth is addressed and should be involved, but there was also the other question, how, of course, should the educational development be continued, hopefully successfully with the young people. There were also the question of how the surpluses, which have been mentioned by the other groups, which are now wasted or thrown away, how can food security be also improved by sharing, also international sharing? But here one problem was that the churches who are on the way and who have developed various devices of sharing could be strengthened in their work by cooperation with governments. Because what one group was saying, that the corporate producers and traders throw food away must be counteracted, and this is of course a political action, a political problem. The question, final question, or one of the major questions, is how we bring about transformation. And here the one was that the churches need to work together in their advocacy, and that cooperation has to be sought and perhaps also to be enforced in a work which also takes a critical look at the trade policies, for instance, between Europe and Africa, because in many cases, projects which have been developed in food production and in trading have been disturbed later by changing trade bargains between the nations and the EU, for instance, in the way that suddenly people were faced with products and competition from European agriculture. Here it needs a closer look for cooperation and for strengthening also the local people to have trust in a successful food production. I think that's about all.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that input. Yes, and let's move to the last group, which is led by, I think it's by Joy, and to present the result of the discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we'll just add from what has been shared already, because there are common themes from the different groups as well. So what's very interesting about the discussion we had, we've been we tried to stay in the topic, but we've also explored other relevance in the topic. And one of it is the two side of the coin, where young people are actually leaving agricultural lands to go to the city because of the industrialization and also technologies. But at the same time, there is a growing movement of young people, especially land activists, young land activists, to actually stay and to promote and to actually campaign, advocate for land rights, and also for people to be efficient in sustainable agriculture. And there was a sharing as well among the indigenous people is that this, like in the Philippines, the continuous threatening, harassment, and red tagging of indigenous people among their lands to accommodate the mining, and transnational companies to really develop the land that will serve only a few, and all of these big corporations that are scheming together with the government. And because of this, there is a very big problem of actually losing this lands, ancestral lands, and that would also affect agriculture, and of course our sustainability in terms of food system, because we know that the indigenous people are crucial in terms of sustaining the land and sustaining food really that the land produces, and it affects, it is a domino effect to everything around us in terms of entire creation. And so, but it is encouraging to see that there is a strong movement of young people still working, taking initiatives, and promoting on sustainable food and agriculture. Another sharing was also that we have to bring young people to leadership, and so that and highlight their agency, so that young people will be able to also lead in different initiatives that are happening right now in terms of fisheries of food and agriculture and food system. And finally, we have shared in the group different good practices from different contexts, like education of girls and young women about nutrition, about the rainbow plate. When you see your food, you eat the rainbow, like all these nutritional elements of the food, and also to encourage churches to have their community gardens in the different churches that could accommodate the community as well. And so these are just some of the sharing that we have in the group, and I think the rest of our sharing are very similar, or are in the same theme as the different sharing also already that we've heard from the different groups as well. But if there's anything I left out, anyone from my group can speak out or put that in the chat so that we can move forward as well in their timing. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Joy, for having reported the insights from the group 6. As time is moving too fast, we are reaching the third part, and the last part of the session. We have a presentation that will be presented by Reverend Nikta Lubale. First of all, let me introduce you, Reverend Nikta. He has been the General Secretary of the Organization of African Instituted Churches based in Nairobi, Kenya since 2007. Reverend Lubale, who is from Uganda, has been involved in the area of faith and development for over 26 years. He has a Master in Social Development and Sustainable Livelihoods from the University of Reading, UK. He has given leadership to developing food and nutrition sovereignty initiatives that are implemented by the churches and farmers organizations, resulting in over 1,000 congregations and farmers-owned initiatives over the last decade. He has also been in the center of mobilizing and building community responses to HIV/AIDS, and has given leadership to the Africa Interfaith Initiative on SDG. The multi-faith platform enabled Africa's faith communities to bring their voices in shaping the SDG. Reverend Nikta, the floor is to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll request Manoj to flag what I'm going to present. First of all, thank you so much for enabling me to be part of this rich meeting, and for all the presenters. I pick on from what Dr. Bom said that food is a gift that has to be shared, that must be shared. And I think we start from there as we analyze and look, discern. She called for analysis and discerning together the way forward as we come out of the food summit. I'll make a few remarks. Number one, how do we relate to God and the resources God has given to us? Food is a resource, but also the resources that enable us to access food and share food. If we are going to move forward as church communities, then we have to look at our theology. What motivates us to participate in reforming the food systems? It has already been mentioned, the world and all that is in it belongs to God. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. That is Psalms 24:1. God from the beginning, as the nation of Israel was shaping, cared about those who are vulnerable in relation to food. And to date, God's intention is to build a society where the systems of production and distribution are just, most especially to the people who are vulnerable and left out. We can find that in Leviticus 19, Leviticus 23, 24, and Deuteronomy. And the scriptures, God repeats himself. And he says, when you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap the edges of your field, nor gather the gleaning of your harvest. You are to leave them for the poor and for the stranger. I'm the Lord your God. I hope we are still hearing that when God speaks to us. This speaks about the system God was putting in place that enables even those who didn't have land to access food. And finally, bringing back worship in farming, that we may handle food and the harvest, hand over the food and harvest to God. I think this is something we have lost. The harvest festivals, we will need to get back to that. I'll talk about that as we go along. But from Deuteronomy 24, Leviticus 19 and Leviticus 23, we see that God was putting in place a system that would cater for those who are vulnerable. Let's go ahead, Manoj. But at the same time, we've had quite a lot. We are working with a world with distorted values, with broken value system, broken relationship with God, broken relationship with one another, broken relationship with the rest of creation. But what should we do? It's important that we move from lament to action. I'll say something here. The systems that disenfranchise first undermine what you have and what you own and what you have control over, make it meaningless, and then replace it with what controls you. So here I would like to call for action beyond what we say. Number one, we have to structure. We have the structures to assert what we believe. Let us utilize them. Look at the church globally, in the rural areas, in the urban centers. Why don't we link the rural and the urban, that the same people, even the same church, could be exploited as farmers, and the same people in the urban area from the same church are exploited as buyers of food. Let's look at our own systems also. Number two, action to assert the values we hold. The liturgy and other processes in the church, do we relate to food? Do we relate to the rest of creation? Let's look at that area because that is a mobilizing point. Number three, action to integrate work for food sovereignty. Here I'm not talking about food security, but food sovereignty in the church structures. Then the work we have to do much is action to work with the farmers. Number one, link.
It's 5 o'clock.
Link farming with ecological renewal. Link farming with the post-harvest handling. Link farming with the nutritional outcomes. Improve access to quality inputs. Improve participation in the markets. And then finally, action to transform policy. Let's move ahead, Manoj. really, we have to organize. Much of the time we have spoken and we've left meetings and the processes. What we are hearing, that if food systems are being captured, we are going to respond by organizing, not by agonizing. It's okay to lament. Lamentation is a spiritual process, but if we stay in lamentation and we don't rise out of the ashes, those who are capturing the world will continue. So organizing for food security will require building farmers' structures that enable them to increase control over the means of production. They have to produce their seeds. Linking farming with the nutrition outcomes, I've already said that. Moving towards climate resilience, stemming the post-harvest losses, and then value addition and effective participation in the markets. Move ahead. Seed, we need to reclaim. Reclaiming seeds as a local resource, not a resource that is manufactured somewhere else, is key to the church, because we have the structures that we work with. Continue. This is an example of a congregation in Uganda. They get seeds from an agricultural research institute of government, plant it. They know that it goes 3 cycles and they have to get a new seed. So they do it. The young woman seated on the chair on the left is an agronomist who has just completed university education as an agronomist, 24 years old. She's in charge of this program. The picture below are people, these are Muslims, they are Catholics, they are African independent, who are standing in front of a church building that is being completed. That is the point of interaction for training, the point of interaction to bring back the seeds, the point of interaction to redistribute the seeds. That is the beginning of taking control. Let us move forward. Leadership in action. The man above is a pastor in the rural area. You see him below. He's leading in training, in establishing a demonstration farm. You can see a string on the ground as a farmer, but also as a leader. Patrick has already mobilized 200 households who are improving their farming practices. And he says they'll be reaching 2025. He's part of the mobilization of the OAIC. Local leadership. Many times we've talked from the global level, from the regional levels. We need leaders who are interacting with the farmers to come to the table and bring their experiences and their resourcefulness. Let's move forward. Farmers can make informed choices. Many times when we talk about climate change, it seems as if climate resilience is very far. Emily from West Pokot, she's harvesting finger millet. She has decided to move from planting maize to planting millet. Number 1, millet is more nutritious. Number 2, millet is climate resilient than maize. They've practiced it in their community through a congregation and through a women group, and they've decided to transform their agriculture. Let us accompany them. They will do it. Move ahead. The picture we are seeing here, I'm just giving illustrations. This is a community group that has been relating to the OAIC for the last 23 years, accompanying them as subsistence farmers. You can call them peasants, who have transformed. The picture above shows that young woman who runs, Doreen, who runs a milk cooler that has been acquired by a rural women cooperative, and they've even acquired it from their county government. That means linking people to the resources that belongs to them as taxpayers is key. It's part of us strengthening the systems. Below is another young woman, Valerie, who is running a milling unit that belongs to this cooperative, and they pack a food, nutritious food that caters for children, that caters for pregnant mothers, that caters for lactating mothers. They are coming into participating in the market. They were peasant farmers, but now they are coming in the market with value-based business principles. Let's go ahead. I think in moving forward, what we shall need to do is community building. Many times we say younger people, women, children. I think it's everybody to come around the table. We need to handle the gender and the generational issues around production, around the processing, around the preservation, around marketing, and around engaging public policy. Especially men will have to consider in church to hand over the productive resources like land and involve young people and involve women in ownership. Finally, I will say, Asante Sana, we can strengthen the process of dealing with the exploitative systems by building systems that are responsive to the realities of the people held in hunger and other forms of indignity. And this calls for community building. We cannot lament. We have the systems in place, but we haven't built them enough so that they are responsive. Churches, especially I can say in Africa where I come from, shouldn't be lamenting. They have all what it takes, but it's for us to know that we can do it and we can reshape our structures so that they are responsive to those who are hungry. For the OAIC, in the next 4 years, we are developing what we are calling 50 food sovereignty initiatives together with the member churches and the farmers in 4 countries in East Africa. The process started 3 years ago, and it is concretizing in that, so that access to quality inputs, the access to extension services, especially linking with government, and then production, processing, collective marketing, and collective voice to influence policy by farmers is being done in that. It's a journey. We are growing, and we shall get there. And the issue is not taking over the role of farmers, but accompanying them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Reverend Nikta, for that powerful sharing. We have learned a lot from your sharing, and thank you so much for that. Since we are out of time, I give the floor to Dr. Manoj. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Reverend Nikta, and thank you very much, Siri, for moderating this wonderful session, which actually brought back input from all the group. And you know, this is I will not go more, but you can be assured that we will put together all these input. I've already shared the C file, a public file, in which all the documents and the presentations that are there, and we will continue to populate that. And we will follow this up with monthly webinars along with the youth network. Next month, we will follow up on climate and food. December, it will be on racism, land and food. January will be linked with water bodies, oceans and fisheries. We will continue. It's a commitment of WCC that we will continue this. But most important is that what we heard today was this beautiful presentation, reflections on the UN Food System Summit, reflections from you, and of course, practically, how can we forward? The organization African Institute of Churches has shown us that very clearly. It is not a theory, it is a reality, what they are doing over the last 10 years. Now I would hand over for some closing remarks from our moderator, Dr. Agnes Abu.
Thank you very much, Dr. Manoj. I hope I've been unmuted. First, may I really thank the resource people and participants for this powerful sharing. I'd like to make 3 comments before we close with a word of prayer, a thanksgiving. One is that we do recognize the importance that food security is an imperative that we need to work with. We are aware of the power systems that are negating transformation towards food as a right, as a divine right, as a necessity for humanity. Secondly, in all we have said, from the theological, the discussions within the UN on food systems, and what Reverend Nick Talubale concluded by, food systems, food is a relational issue. It's relational when it comes to our sharing, which is an absolute necessity, and a demand and a call that we share with brothers and sisters. It is relational when it comes to how we worship, we relate to God, and therefore relate to one another. It is relational when it comes to how we relate to creation. The text that Reverend Nicta read last, which was talking about when you are harvesting, the harvest festivals, where did they go? We need to restart them. We used to have in the churches, I think it was what? These days of harvesting, and we need to bring back those symbolic actions so that they can help us refocus our practices, our thought systems, our relational systems. Finally, we have also lifted up the fact that there is a positive move by young men and women who are really coalescing around food systems that are, and agricultural production, agricultural work that is really God-centered, wholesome, if you like to put it, and that does recognize the place of God and the need for sanctity of life. And you can't have life without basing it on quality food, food that can nurture the body. My sense is that this discussion, as Dr. Manosha has rightly put it, has to continue. We will not see an end to pandemics, to viruses, as long as we temper and produce and misbehave with the creation the way we are doing. We will be very sick. More people will be very sick. There will be more deaths because we are tampering with, we are interfering with the very system that God bestowed upon us to use for ourselves and for one another. And therefore the need to have in mind posterity, the future, unborn generations, present generations, past generations. So our education, our mindset changes need to take place, recognizing that no one, even the poorest, have the capacity to make decisions and to make choices that are positive towards sustainability of creation, that are geared towards resilience and continuity of life, which is again our gift from God. At the center is relational, is the gift of life, is the right, divine right to share. It's mandatory. And so thank you so much. Our time is gone, but you can see that from the first group, second group, breakout groups, and the last group, there's such a lot of rich information, experiences we build on. We need to continue. In fact, before Reverend talked about organizing and not agonizing, that was what I was going to conclude with. So let me just repeat it. Let us continue to organize, to lift up our voices, to connect and not agonize, but organize, build our systems. Thank you so much. God bless you. We are together. We have hope in the young people. And I think if Dr. Manoj, you want to say the prayer or someone else?
No, Dr. Agnes. I just want to, I want you to conclude with a short prayer. But before that, if everybody can open their cameras, because it will be nice for all of us to, that Marcelo will help us to capture this moment. If everyone can open your cameras so that, we can see everybody and take a picture. I mean, there were 50 people, the numbers are a little bit less, but whoever is there, please open your cameras. And then I'll request Dr. Agnes to say a short word of prayer.
Thank you, Dr. Manoj. I'll say a short prayer of thanksgiving, but I'll also ask us to conclude with grace. Let us pray. Thank you, God of life, God of justice, God of peace, God who has given us so much, including this day, to meet together, to share, and to begin to appreciate that which you have given us as men and women of faith, as churches, as young men and women who the baton is being handed over to and who are already in the process of assuming responsibility, taking charge of that which you have given us so that your earth, your creation can again be seen as beautiful, as worthy being there. We thank you for all the presenters, for the participants, the moderators, and for the staff, and in particular, the executive secretary for this particular task of food security. We honor you, God. You've given us a role. We repent that we have not done that which we ought to do. We have failed you in many ways, but thank you because you are a God of promise, you are a God of forgiveness, you are a God of covenant. We ask that you allow us another chance to rise up and to bring to form the voice of your people, to act, to organize, and not to agonize. We thank you and we honor you. And in this we say the grace together. May the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship with us now and forevermore. Amen. Thank you so much.
Let us wave our hands. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for overstaying for 15 minutes. I'm sorry, but thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Manoj. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. Joy Eva is our youth secretary. Thank you, Joy, for accompanying along with the young people. And thank you, friends. Thank you, members of the International Reference
Group.
Thank you.
Agnes. Okay.
And of the International Reference Group of WCEAA and EW.